Okay, I want to say thank you to everybody for attending this Housing Element Update open house this evening. My name is Luke Connolly. I'm the City of Cupertino's Assistant Community Development Director. With me tonight is also Pew Ghosh, the city's planning manager. And we have our consultant team working on the Housing Element, Charlie Knox, Erica Lindstrom, and Raul Tovar. And tonight's meeting is going to be a repeat of a meeting we had in person Saturday during the Fall Festival at Quinlan Center. So we're going to cover really the exact same material if there are people out there that attended that meeting. Tonight, though, we're going to be doing this all in a virtual format, obviously, so it'll be a little bit of a variation on that. But for the people who I assume most of you have been following the housing element, we've had probably about 30 meetings on this, most of which in a more formal setting with either the city's planning commission or the city council. The meeting tonight is going to take really a different format and have a different purpose. I think as you can see on the opening slide, this mentions focusing on rezoning. So what we're really getting at tonight is that we're assuming the city is going to get a certified housing element and add the housing units that the state is looking for us to do in the next 8 years. So this is not really focusing at all on individual sites or any of the things we've talked about in other meetings, policies, things like that. What we're looking for in this open house is to get feedback really from all of you, and feedback in particular on assuming that this housing is built at the different densities we're going to be talking about. What do you want that housing to look like? What amenities do you want to see come as part of that housing? So that's really the focus. This isn't so much which sites will it occur, are you in favor or not? We're assuming that it's going to happen. So try to keep that in mind as you go through. The majority of this meeting is going to be in an informal setting, held in breakout rooms, with you being able to respond to different examples of housing development. Again, if you have not been following the housing element, we've been working on this pretty steadily for about 1.5 years. All cities in California are either recently completing this process or still going through it. And unlike the housing element from 8 years ago, which is the interval in which you update housing elements, the city's looking at adding almost 4,600 housing units through this, versus 8 years ago, it was a little over 1,000. So it's a significant change for the city of Cupertino, as it is for really all cities in the Bay Area. That said, I'm not going to get into all of the details related to the housing element update. We have a website that covers, it has all of our prior meetings. It covers this in much, much greater detail than what I can get into this evening. So again, I'm just going to close my remarks now. I will let Erica Lindstrom begin the presentation. But I want to say at the end of that, we're going to have a brief question and answer session, about 15 minutes. And we're going to spend the majority of the evening, up until 8 o'clock, having an open house where it will give you a chance to, again, view the different stations. There'll be 3 of those, and get a chance to comment directly to us. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up my introductions and turn the presentation over to Erica.
Thank you, Luke. And before I begin, I was wondering if you wanted to take a minute just to let us know who's joined us, if we have any council members joining us, and if they would like to say a few words.
I believe we do have one council member in attendance, and I would leave it up to them if they would like to be introduced or have any comment at this time. And one thing I did neglect to say in my opening remarks too is that this meeting is being recorded. Okay, since I'm not hearing anything, I think we could just go ahead and begin the presentation, Erica.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So next up, we'll have a brief presentation where we'll go over just what the housing element is and the related rezoning. We'll then have some time for questions and answers. And as Luke mentioned, the majority of our time tonight will be in the virtual open house stations or breakout rooms, where you could provide input and talk with staff. And then before we begin, I'd like to just go over a few Zoom housekeeping items. We just ask that you treat all participants with kindness, respect, and consideration. There will be time to hear everyone's ideas and comments. And as Luke said, this meeting is being recorded, or at least the main room will be. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. If you'd like to ask a question, you could use the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, you could do *9. And then if you are calling by phone, in order to mute yourself, you'll need to press *6. And lastly, if there are any phone numbers that are not linked to video feed, you can message Raul with Placeworks. He's our logistics lead for tonight, and you could just let him know your name and phone number so that he could link you. If you are not familiar with the housing element, it's one of the 8 required elements of the city's general plan. California state law requires the housing element to be updated every 8 years in order to study housing needs in the community and to plan for adequate housing capacity across all income levels. We're currently in the 6th cycle housing element update, which has an 8-year time frame of 2023 to 2031. And as a first step for planning for a community's housing needs over the next 8 years, the state calculates and determines each jurisdiction's regional housing needs allocation, also known as RHNA. Cupertino's RHNA for this cycle is 4,588 new units, and the target income breakdown is shown in the table below. To plan for the development of these new units, some sites throughout the city need to be rezoned to increase development capacity, which is the focus of today's meeting. The city began housing element update efforts back in 2021, and since then they've had many meetings on the housing element process, RHNA, and the housing element site selection. Our meeting tonight builds on the input gained from those past meetings, but has a slightly different focus of looking forward to future implementation and rezoning. And tonight we're really here to hear from the community. We have 3 different breakout rooms, each focus on a different topic. Station 1, or breakout room 1, will focus on community amenities. Station 2 is for development types and forms. And Station 3 is for development standards. Once it's time to break out into these groups, you'll see a screen like the one shown to the right. And from this, you can select the breakout room that you would first like to join. Feel free to move at your own pace between the breakout rooms up until 8 p.m. You do not need to go in order. And to switch between the rooms, just click on the breakout room button at the bottom of the screen to change the rooms. If you do finish at the breakout rooms before 8 p.m., feel free to exit the meeting whenever you'd like. And just a reminder, if you have any issues joining a breakout room, Raul will be in the main room to help. And then we also wanted to point out that if you'd like to be notified of any future project updates or events, you could sign up at the project webpage at engagecupertino.org/housing element. All right, we'll now have about 15 minutes for Q&A. If we don't get to your question within this time frame, please email housing@cupertino.org, and we'll have this email address up on the next slide, which will stay up in the main room for your reference. So to ask a question, please raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 if you're joining by phone, and then Luke will call on you as he sees you. I'll stop screen sharing now.
Yes, our first person asking a question is Lisa Warren.
Correct. Thank you, Pew.
Actually, when Erica referred to seeing something on the right, there was nothing there. I didn't see any screen sharing where I'm coming from, so that concerns me that I won't be able to go into breakout rooms. But I don't know. Did everyone else see it?
I can reshare my screen for that item.
And it might be under the more buttons, possibly, Erica.
So
Oh,
sorry, I shouldn't have said to the right. It's to the right of this current slide. This breakout pop-up box here.
Okay, I hadn't seen the slide before. I don't know why. So glad I can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thanks for asking that for everyone else.
Me again. Since no one else seems to be raising their hand, can I make a comment?
Please do.
Okay, so in the first quarter of 2015, there was an extensive outreach to residents with a lot of these same kind of questions. It wasn't the housing survey, it was the building height and community benefits survey that got such good feedback and, over 100 written comments and a lot of good information. And I feel like a lot of the questions that we're going to be looking at as far as what we want to see in size, shape, amenities, etc., was covered then. And I really hope that staff that was there at the time could share that information with newer staff, which we have a lot of, because it was a bigger audience and there was good information that I'm pretty certain has not changed as to how people feel about what they want the city to look and feel like. I have it. I can provide it if somebody needs it.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Allison, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just had a quick question. Do you have a good idea of when we'll be able to see the next draft of the housing element?
Hoping by the end of this month, it could be early October, but that's the target date for right now.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like people are in a hurry to get to the breakout rooms. Is your hand up again, Lisa? Did you want to say something, Lisa, or have a question?
I do. I just didn't do unmute well enough. I have a question about policies. I was in a housing commission meeting this morning and they are all on board for really wanting to have input on policies because that's their job and they've been asking to do that over and over. And I know that some community groups have submitted large lists of policy preferences that I'm a little concerned that that's going to get priority. Are there other people, if there's not an opportunity for other people, including the Housing Commission, to weigh in on that? So is there, if you could just describe, and I know it doesn't have to do with what you're doing tonight, so if you don't want to answer now, that's fine, but please maybe get back to me and others on offline of how policies are going to be considered and how people can actually give input on those.
Yeah, I could just briefly answer that. I think on the July 25 City Council meeting where we had kind of a comprehensive presentation on the housing element, we did get direction from the City Council that night regarding policies. It was at a very high level. The revised draft that will be going out will be much more developed than the first draft and have more information on policies. We fully expect to have to submit a third draft of the housing element. We're hoping that we can do that by December of this year, maybe January. And throughout this process, I mean, one of the things that the state through HCD is fully expecting is input from the public, which is why we're having meetings like we are tonight. So there will be other opportunities, I think, between the city's commissions and the city council, meetings like this, and just being able to contact staff directly with your thoughts. So we're not looking for any one group's input, but the public's input and anybody that has thoughts on what the housing element update should include and how they feel the city of Cupertino should look over the 8 years of that housing element. So, but I'm happy to talk to you further, Lisa. But yeah, really, again, tonight, I think if we can try to focus more on the rezoning and the sort of the appearance of the new types of housing, that's really what we want to try to focus on tonight, because we haven't done a lot of that yet.
Thank you.
Seems like
Me
Lisa.
again. Can I go again? Just
Okay, this has got to be the last time, though.
Sure. So I'm wondering how appearance, which I understand this is about, as was Saturday's open house. And it's important because that's what a lot of people that aren't involved in all the political stuff in the city, that is important to them. So it's sort of carries heavier weight in some ways. But how will appearance translate to policies, or policies translate to appearance, or are they unrelated?
I think the policies are going in a different direction than what we're talking tonight. This, I think, is really looking at physical form and what amenities and things you think would be helpful or necessary to come along with the additional housing. I mean, I think one of the big changes people are all aware of is Cupertino, like a lot of the cities in this county, was very suburban in nature. And through this housing element and just through the natural aging and maturation of cities, we're looking at much higher density housing now. And for a lot of people, I understand that's something that's new. It can be seen as scary. And we're trying to give examples of what that housing can look like at different densities, you know, from townhomes on up. So, but, you know, I think one of the things we wrestle with early on is just the sheer number of units. And, you know, for one of the lower density housing types we're looking at would be townhomes that are about, say, 20 per acre. If we were to just say we're going to accommodate all of our housing needs through townhomes, we would need a land area about 2.5 times the size of De Anza College. So this is why we're looking at higher density housing, and really, I think, looking at along the corridors like Stevens Creek and De Anza Boulevard. But, you know, to get the reaction, how many stories, what form should it take? That's, I think, something we, you know, despite all the meetings we've had, we haven't talked a lot about that. And, you know, just looking at the reaction tonight, maybe it's helpful if we get into the breakout rooms and we start taking a look at those things. So if people don't have any objection or they feel like their questions have been answered, it might be better to get you looking at what we're talking about and get your reactions to it.
Luke, if I may, the one thing I would add to that, because this question came up on Saturday at Quinlan also, there is a policy component to how things look and what amenities they have and where they're located. And that's generally in the general plan, and the housing element, as you know, is part of the general plan. And then there are also general plan designations, which identify areas for lower or higher density or mixed use. So there is a policy level umbrella for all this, but once you go into the zoning code and design standards, design guidelines don't fly anymore in California. You can't just say, I like it or I don't like it, or it should look like this. It becomes a legal, quasi-legal tool. You know, zoning is the law. So when we say development standards, those really are what things can look like, and they have to be measurable. And this is a pretty strong kind of wave of legislation in California over the last 5 to 8 years. You no longer can get in front of a city planning commission and have the planning commission say, oh, go back and change the color, go back and change this. You have to meet measurable standards. How big are the facade openings? How far apart are they from each other? How far back are the windows recessed? How many balconies do you get? Where do they go? And so when you start looking at the boards we're going to show you, and these are repeats of actual physical boards that were on easels last Saturday at the community center, they actually have examples of design you can point to. And what we're going to try to hope to get from everyone tonight is, I like this, I don't like that. I don't like it at all, but I like this one the best, or I like that one better. And that's going to give us an idea of how to write the standards, not the policies, that will allow that to happen, so that if and when housing is built on the sites that are identified in the housing element, and many others that are also still in play as well, depending on, property value and developer desires and owner desires, that we come out with high quality, well-designed, comfortable places that are attractive. And so it's not just for the residents who are inside the units, but for the people who live outside and are already in the neighborhood, who may not have been expecting something that big or that new or that many of them, to have a say over how it looks and how it feels. So it's kind of about two things. One is the actual design of the new development, and also how it functions within the neighborhood to try to make the neighborhood a nicer place to live. So, and believe it or not, even though that sounds like policy, it's the result of standards, which really are, to carry the weight of the law in terms of what is allowed and what isn't in development. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you, Trey. And I mean, that's a good point, because I think in Cupertino, unlike some other cities, we have a lot of interface with our housing sites with lower density single family neighborhoods. So trying to master that interface is really a key issue in the city. And feedback on things like that, it's like, think of it from the city's interest. What would you like to see, assuming this development is going to happen? How does it fit into the community as good as it possibly can? That's really a key element of what we want to get at tonight.
And we've heard that a lot, and there's two pieces of that. One is the setback, which is how far back from the neighboring property line something is built. But the other is something called a step back, which is how far back upper stories should be even from that setback. And more or less what people in the Cupertino community have said, and this is pretty common in the peninsula and the South Bay, and really a lot of other places, is whatever's there now, even if it could change, if you're going to go more than 1 story higher than that, start stepping it back. And most people don't want to see a pyramid or a series of stair steps, but most people do want to see, if I'm in my yard, I don't really want someone in something new next door looking over the fence into my yard. If I'm a 1-story home, I'm hoping that there's not a 3-story wall next to me. So really basic stuff like that, which is, again, the subject of standards, not policy. And that's really what we're hoping to get out of you when we see the pictures tonight and when we see the designs. Be as specific as you can about what you want to see and what concerns you and what you're hoping for. Because really it's your input that will help us write actual, standards in the zoning code that try to approach or even achieve the type of development you'd like to see the most. But I agree, Luke, let's go to the breakout rooms.
Yeah, 6:30. I think we're on time anyway. So that would.
All right, I'm gonna turn on breakout rooms, but I want to remind participants that if they are calling in from both their phone and their computer, their audios must be both turned on, unmuted to be heard in the call. With that said, I am going to launch breakout rooms. And then for the breakout rooms, you'll also be able to go into whichever breakout room you like as a participant. All right, this should be open. Let me know if you have any issues.
Have really good input though.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good, even on my end.
Yeah, we got some really good input.
Good. I'm glad.
Really good discussions about parking or not parking, what to use the space for. It was really, really sophisticated discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I got input on balconies. People like balconies. Some people had more specific ideas about where balconies could be located, interior to the project, kind of facing the street. There was generally a preference for balconies specifically to allow, people that are not as mobile to have the ability to go outside, for example.
Yeah.
Interact with the outside. There was some input about mixed use being good.
Yeah.
Also input about how seniors might prefer single floors for
Yes.
their living arrangements.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so not the townhome style, more the multifamily mixed use style.
Yeah, I was telling Jean, maybe only even 10 years ago, it used to be called universal design, which isn't just
Right.
about no thresholds and flat floors. It's also light switches, which have changed to now become that, toilet seat locations, how you get in and out of a shower. But now you guys have probably seen people are starting to call it visitability, which I hope doesn't last as a term, because if I'm living there, I'm not visiting. I mean, I
Correct.
guess we're all only visiting for a temporary period, but
Right.
yeah, it really makes a difference. My mom is 89, has Alzheimer's, shuffles her feet, and you just see like how important that is to not have to
Right.
cross a threshold or raise a foot or whatever. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we also got some input on forms, which was kind of nice. Some people preferred not peaked roofs necessarily, but pitched roofs.
Yeah.
There were others that had concerns about pitched roofs, saying maybe that impedes placement of solar panels. There was some concern about parking spillover into neighborhoods. It's always a concern. What else?
Roy and Angie, you did not come to my breakout room.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just saying to Roy and Angie, they did not come to my breakout room. But you can always send us emails about anything to the email address you see there. But I think in general, we got some really great input. And in my room, people were really judicious about the green dots. So they're really focused on 5 or 6 key things that actually people either sequentially or while they were in the room together agreed on. So we got some really positive preferences, and everyone was very positive. It was about do this as opposed to don't do that. So that was really, really fun to watch and be part of.
Yeah, we got a lot of participation, so that was kind of cool.
Well, it's a little early, but I don't want to make people stay longer than they feel like they have to. And I really, really, really doubt anyone new will join. I think what we could do is staff consultants could stay on for a few more minutes just in case.
I'd like to
ahead,
just
Lisa.
quickly thank Roy for being here, because he is actually a landowner who was planning on doing something. So I'm hoping he is attending to get a feel for what people are saying, because I believe that's the kind of person he is. So thanks, Roy.
Can we, Roy, if it's okay with you, can we show you? Is it possible? I guess I could share my screen and show my board so you can see it. You can also see it later on the city website, but maybe that's a good thing for us to do, since we're kind of weighing down, but we've got a little extra time. Why don't we each show each other our 3 boards? And I'll start since it was my day. So let's see, share screen, which I'm now able to do. This will stop Erica. So here's what our folks said in my breakout room. Some of the things you talked about, Pew. Townhomes, flats are really preferable to accommodate wheelers and walkers. We did have one architectural comment, like if you're going to do townhomes, people had looked at the kind of the 2 craftsman board and batten style we had and thought, what about California style? Balconies are important, rooftop solar. We know on the larger projects, like the one on the right, which is probably 3 or 4 times the size of the one on the left physically, it's going to be required. But what about these smaller ones? Can we really try to emphasize or require that? A lot of stuff about parking. 6 of, I think, the 9 commenters said, underground is preferable, but as few spaces as possible, and really try to keep the surface green. And then others said, surface parking may not be so bad, but it really should be embedded within green space and keep space for things like kids to play and people to hang out and walk dogs or whatever. Don't forget about EV charging. Runoffs really should be available for low impact development. Sorry to use the jargon, cleaning up groundwater, surface water runoff. And just basically minimize space for cars. So emphasize landscaping, open space, balconies, and minimal setbacks to create room for other things, not necessarily to put buildings closer to the street. So I'll stop sharing and let someone else share.
Very good. Are you going next?
How about you go? So we could do 3, 2, 1.
Sure. So I'll share my screen. So I kind of mentioned a lot of the things that we did here. Sorry, give me a second while I try to zoom into this. It's kind of a big board. But yes, we did get, dots for a lot of the different kind of styles. A lot of people like the green space, like you said, Charlie. They wanted vegetation in front of developments. They wanted the color. In my case, a lot of people talked about the color variation. There were 2 people that mentioned that they like the color variations. They talked about building step backs, and the positives of having balconies. In the case of the 50 dwelling units per acre board, people like the appearance of the mixed use and the multifamily better. We did get strong support for mixed use, but we also heard from one person that said that, mixed use is good, but, not every site has to be mixed use. If 2 or 3 developments are happening in, close proximity, not everything needs to be mixed use. Some of it could be 100% residential. While, like I said, everybody liked the idea of balconies, one person did mention that balconies should technically, because it does cause heartburn, may be interior facing or facing the street, that kind of stuff. And we did get one very strong advocate for higher density, the climate change and lower VMT and all that other good stuff. They asked for bicycle and pedestrian amenities. Let's see, one person said that they liked anything that had variation in height, color, roof. Lots of vegetation is a big plus. Of course, increased height could potentially allow a lot of vegetation, room for vegetation. One person commented about the trees in the front of the development that they liked. One person commented about the flat roofed structures being too boxy. So that's kind of sort of what we heard. Trying to see what else this is. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Interesting. The one thing at variance, will you scroll all the way to the right?
Sure.
And this is not major, but and there's only 1 dot out of the 4. I'm moving my cursors if you can see it. Sorry. There's only 1 dot out of those 4, and I don't remember exactly, without looking through the files, the dots on the physical boards from Saturday. But my sense on Saturday was people liked the bottom right one the best. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I did ask whether people wanted me to place dots on any of these in terms of visual preference, and the only one that somebody actually mentioned and said I would like a dot there was that particular one.
Great. These are great comments.
Yeah, and I'll stop sharing. So Erica, you can go.
Great. Let me share mine really quickly. Mine was for building amenities and placemaking features. We got a decent spread of dots throughout, with a small majority on common open space or courtyards, and then several that had 2 dots. And then in terms of specific comments, we did have some comments for retail. A lot of the comments were mainly just, being thoughtful. So instead of just saying we want retail, be thoughtful about what is going in there. What does the community actually need? Do we need another boba shop, or do we need a drugstore, grocery store for the community? And then similarly for active street frontages, there were some comments about, thoughtfulness for that too, and intention. So it's great to have active street frontages, but really considering pedestrian safety, for instance, maybe focusing active street frontages more on areas where the streets are less busy instead of, the main thoroughfares. Let's see, we also had some additional ideas. So efforts to reduce greenhouse gas, outdoor dining, for additional building amenities. We did hear quite a bit about aging in place. That was a common theme with my small group. So aging in place, including medical services, areas nearby for people to, you know, to hang out at. So common open space or courtyards. And then another example of requiring community gardens and multifamily. So I believe that was generally what we heard here.
Awesome. Well, so that I don't have the last word necessarily, Luke or Pew, do you want to, nice, thanks, Kitty. Do you want to say anything about next steps? And Erica, do you want to just remind people of where they can find this information all summarized on the website for anyone to view? And since this piece was indeed part of the main room, it will be recorded. And so folks, even if they weren't able to join tonight or on Saturday, when they come back to view the video, will see this piece of it and be able to see what their community member cohorts and colleagues and peers had to say. And maybe that will prompt some more comments by email to the city.
No, I just want to say thanks to everybody who attended, and to Councilmember Moore, Lisa Warren, Roy, and Jean Bedord for hanging into the finish here, so I didn't feel like we were just talking amongst ourselves. But no, I think between this and Saturday's event, my impression was it went well. We got a lot of good feedback, which is really what we wanted to get. We wanted to hear from people, not just talk to them. So I think for a lot of people following this, they know our kind of next milestone is to get our next revised draft out to HCD. So that's probably going to be 2 to 3 weeks out right now, the way things look. I don't think we have any other calendared events right now, no dates. So I would advise anybody again to go to the engagecupertino.org website to view all the information we have there on the housing element, which is now getting pretty extensive. That is being updated regularly, which for a while it was not. So yeah, I'm just very happy to see how this went, and that we had meetings in a much more informal setting that were a lot more interactive with the public. So
Luke,
if anyone else wants to say something, that's all for me.
I just wanted to add one last thing is if anybody did want to sign up for notifications, please go to the city's main page, which is cupertino.org, and at the very top you should see a little link for e-notifications. You can sign up for e-notifications for the housing element, so please feel free to do it either at the engagecupertino.org website or the city's homepage. You will get notifications either way. And then if you have any additional questions or comments, please email housing@cupertino.org. That was it for me.
Okay, I think it's
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Have a
night.
good evening, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.